But I thought what I would do is, well, something I mentioned last week in the written instruction for the designing part one, which is the idea of what we saw Carter do, where he runs .read and then whatever the SQL file is. Now, in his case, he did schema, and my example is going to show that as well. But one of the things as I was looking at that and I reflected upon last semester when I did this, we did more of running our queries this way. But honestly, now that I've been through more than a handful of technical interviews, what I've appreciated is how well every student so far has been able to successfully do the workflows that I've created for this class. And workflows are really important in this topic and really with any, but specifically here. But I just want to, for today, show you, right? And then if you want to, as part of your reply, I'm not going to require it here, but you could say, should I update this, what I'm about to show you of what I've considered. Now, I'm not doing it for now, so don't, if you're like, oh, Rio, don't change the workflow, I just got it, okay? I'm not going to for now or even for our next problem set, but for our last problem set, we actually will probably change it just because of what it requires, not because I necessarily want to. So let me move over to my code space setup. And so I already changed all this so you didn't have to watch me, so I'm just going to show you. So this would have been our normal, right? What we've created, our SQL file that has our mode and it has the output. And in this case, goes back to standard input, and here's the command we run to actually run this. So in this case, this is how it would change, is you would actually have, now I'm using Carter's file name. It doesn't have, it could be any queries we've written. It doesn't, this is just the example that you saw, and I've already run it, and you can tell I've commented out, and I've already created the database itself. But in this case, what we've been doing and what I think has actually worked well, and let me just say why, but actually, let me complete this thought and then we'll come back around to that. So in here, instead of having the SQL commands in here, you could actually just have an SQL, proof of work SQL, right? And then every week you would have the same file name, and all you would do is update the database and any changes to the actual output file. But it would make it less changes. But again, it seemed like everybody I've seen so far navigated that process. But what does this give you, right? So this gives you the ability to, on the terminal, just do the .read and then the whatever the name of the SQL file is. And there's some benefit to doing that. I think there's probably maybe a slight productivity increase you may get. I don't know. But I also think there might be a bit of a downside because one of the things I've seen this semester, so, it's one of those pluses or minuses. This semester is by copying and pasting onto the command line the SQL, the output messages for what the issue is are much better than doing the .read. So maybe I've talked myself out of it. I don't know. It's always, again, when you're not again, but when you're teaching, you're always trying to figure out how can I make this a real world process and keeping intact the goals of what I'm trying to do, which is to give you more time of understanding why you do workflows, helping them with you showing your proof of work, and just hopefully over time also because this kind of stuff in the real world it does exist. I've seen it. I've had to use it in those contexts. And so that's why I typically bring them into my courses. Okay. All right. So you don't have to code this. You do not have to code this. I'm just showing the example, right? Because you saw it in the course. I want you to know it is a way. It's a fairly common way, but also what we're doing is a fairly common way of doing that as well. Okay, so again, not required to give me feedback if you have any. I would appreciate it. So I've been reflecting upon kind of what I did last week with looking forward and realizing we're only going to have one problem set for designing. And then we'll do writing for 2 weeks, and then we'll have one problem set for writing. And I thought, one of the big skills that you develop over doing writing more and more queries is actually the idea of taking an understanding based on the requirement, right? So like here's your database, here's some data. Now, right? Did this create the kind of design based on the requirements? And I don't know if this prompt does it, but what I'm gonna have you do here is I'm gonna have you copy this prompt I've created. I spent a little bit of time just going through and creating it, so you could just copy it from end to beginning to end. Copy into whatever your favorite Gen AI tool is, and like I put mine over here, right? So here's my prompt itself, right? And so once you do that, it allows you to then pick a topic. I thought this would be a little more fun. Let you pick a topic. I chose. What did I choose? What did I choose? I chose cats and toys. It's my life. Okay, so and then it's going to create for you, right? It's going to give you. Okay, here's what we're going to create. I got 3 tables. I told the prompt says between 2 and 3. Creates the SQL. I've also given it a guide. I noticed it didn't completely follow my guide, which I'm kind of bummed about. If you saw it in here, this was my guide. It should have. Okay. So, and that's the other thing is you give me feedback on the prompt itself if you want, right? So there's the schema that it created, right? And then step 3 is actually going to give you some data. It's actually going to just give you, and I decided instead of having it give you the SQL that writes the data because we haven't been there yet, just to give it to you in table form. And then this is the part that is, of course, the part that I want you to get experience with, right? Is based on the schema and the sample data provided. And I've given it kind of 3 questions, and then I said come up also with your own. But I want you to try to attempt to answer these questions, right? Do all the values fit into the table you've created? So you have to look at the data, you have to look at the table or the schema and see if it matches up, right? And then ask you about the foreign key to enforce the correct relationships between these. If not, what would you change to support this data? So these are great questions, right? And is there anything you would add? And this one is definitely could be different. It's not optional. It shouldn't say optional because I guess what it did is it took my prompt, right? So I said here, ask me reflection questions that may be something. I should clear that up. That's maybe why it didn't actually do it, but it should ask you this and then come up with its own question as well. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. And then in the reply, and I'll clean that up before you see it, attempt to answer all the questions or ask it questions to help you understand the questions, right? If you're not sure what it means, right? But attempt to do that and then see how far you get. Try to get all the way through it. And this is again one of those, the more you do this. Now this is not a problem set, but this is getting you ready to see a problem set, because the problem set we're going to do is, I believe, the donut shop, which of all the problem sets is the one that's kind of third in that sequence, and the one that I think takes a bit more reasoning about. Okay, so see how far you can get. And then you reply, what did you learn from interacting with the prompt? That's 80 points, right? So I want you to tell us what you learned from doing that, right? Or I said before, right? I did say from the interacting with, I said somewhere you could actually give me feedback if you thought, what should I change about the prompt as well? That could be the other thing, because prompt writing is really helpful, okay? And something that I spend a bit of time thinking about, mostly because of our reviews. And I can't say I'm the best at it. It's like anything, the more you do of it, the better you get. Okay, so then and in this case should be a substantive, substantive reply. Should be not repo, but reply there. I'll fix that. It's always good when you get to review your own stuff. All right, hope this helps. You're going to finish the last part of the designing. I probably won't have a video for that because it's just the final topics. Really good stuff to finish up with columns. column constraints and how those work and implementing that. Such good stuff. And then you'll have your review, and then I will work on the donut shop. Well, I won't work at a donut shop. Wouldn't be me if I did that. Anyway, have a good one and talk to you later.